You'll do anything to be accepted, to be normal, to fit in. You'll get the job. You'll marry the girl. You'll work for the fascist state when it's in power and turn on it when it falls. You'll kill or let others kill for you. You blend in. You're the conformist.
You know what? This is a film. Bernardo Bertolucci's The Conformist is a film that has been sitting in my head for about 30 years now. Never had seen it. Only seen a few images from it. But it was introduced to me in the early 90s in a montage film, in a montage documentary that I've mentioned many times on this show. A film called Visions of Light, The Art of Cinematography. And in that documentary, they spoke to a number of only cinematographers, Ernest Dickerson, Vilmos Zsigmond, James Wong Howe. But they spoke to Vittorio Storaro, who lensed this particular film. It was his first collaboration with Bertolucci. He would go on to shoot Coppola's Apocalypse Now and a number of other films. But I wanted to see, there were images. There was, in the film, there is a scene where the camera is very low to the ground, probably resting on the ground, pointing towards an old-fashioned, probably Ford 1930s vehicle. And I guess a fall wind is capturing all the leaves on the ground and spreading them across the screen. And it's just a beautiful moment. And I think from that time on, it's a shot that has captivated me. In addition to a number of other shots that I've seen from this movie. In particular, a real easy one for me, light shining through a somewhat darkened room. There's just something about that captures my imagination, that grabs a hold of me. And when it informs a story, for me at least, I find myself really enthralled by the images on the screen. This is my first time seeing this film, and I had no idea what it was about. I didn't know the fascist angle. I wasn't really sure. I kind of figured it was the 30s, but I wasn't really sure if it was pre-war, post-war. I didn't know what it was or where it exactly was set in time. That being said, the film was both rewarding and frustrating, because I think it's a brilliant and beautiful film that is held back by a lead actor that I don't think really, I don't think this French actor, Jean-Louis Trintignant, I would have chosen somebody else. I would have chosen somebody who could emote more. Not to say that I would like for the performance to be more theatrical, but this guy seems like a complete blank slate until the very end. But I think it's a brilliant story. I think it's a brilliant capturing of 1930s Italy, fascism, and like you said, the lengths to which we go for personal and professional success. I'm really interested in what you have to say because I know you're not a student specifically of this, but it does fall into your wheelhouse, I would say. So, Mr. Chavez, what was your relationship to this film?
I heard it was good, and so I watched it just to fit in. No, I had never heard of this. I'd heard of this movie, but I'd never seen it.
Okay. Okay, hearing of it, do you mean hearing of its existence or hearing of what it was about and the power? What had you heard? What did you know?
I knew that there was a movie called The Conformist, and as a matter of fact, when there's the scene when he goes to, I think it's the scene where he goes to see his father, who is like a mental patient, and there's these steps, right?
Yes. Particularly beautifully
steps,
shot, yes. Sorry.
And I said, that's it. In Anthony Bourdain's Rome episode, he features those steps. And so I made the connection. Yeah. And so I had just heard of, how Anthony Bourdain, student of film, would do that. He would include certain shit in his episodes. Like the Lost in Translation, that bar.
Yeah, I remember well.
So I had seen clear shots. I have from 1,000 years ago when I took a film class, I have a film book that it's most likely it has a page where maybe there's a picture of it, little things here and there. But I didn't have a concept of really what the film was. And then you suggested it recently, and I saw the trailer, and I said, yeah, let's do it. And let's do it right after we record, the week before we recorded last week, the trial. And obviously when we record doesn't line up with when you people at home or wherever the fuck you are hear the episodes, because it's two different things. But last week we recorded the trial, the Franz Kafka, the Orson Welles, that version of a conformist society, that version of, it's not fascism, but it is to a degree an authoritarian society, in as much as like the bureaucratic aspect of it, which, I mean, obviously bureaucracy can exist in multiple forms of government. That's not it, but the point is the same. And so that's my kind of, not relationship with the film, but just knowledge of what the film, that there was such a thing as this film called The Conformist. And it's interesting to just jump right in. You talked about the actor, Trintignant, that he was a blank slate. And number one, let me hold that thought and back up a little bit in order to get to it. I am, as those of you who have listened to fucking more than one episode know, that I'm not as emotional as I may be as a person. Like, that's not something that I really lead with or whatever. So I also don't really engage films primarily through emotion. I mean, I do that secondarily, but I don't go to me, it's like, okay, how is it visually, stylistically, etc.? How is it thematically? How is it artistically? And then it's like, that's what captures me. And then secondarily to me is like, how did it make me feel? Because a lot of times I'm more, especially in this show, for the purposes of this show, if you are already going to like not focus, but if you're already going to like touch on how it makes you feel, I'm also, it's a good balance so that I can like look at it from what it makes me think about, and then we can kind of prompt each other with the opposite, right?
Sure.
Instead of like, oh, I felt this, I felt that, I felt this, I felt that, and we didn't think shit, that's extreme. I'm not saying that either. But so, how did I feel about the film? Now to counter my own like inclinations or whatever, is I had to watch it twice because I found it to be too dry for my tastes. Which, I mean, I'm also dry, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I found it beautiful, but I thought it had too many scenes, too many flashbacks, and so therefore I had to watch it twice because I said, fuck, like, I can't get into it the first time. I have to go back, and the blank slate aspect. That's what I was gonna say. I don't know if that's something that Bertolucci. I can imagine that Bertolucci was like, no, you need to be a blank slate.
Yeah.
Because this character is nothing. I recently saw a clip. It's been circulating with like commentators of it's Jordan Peterson. They have these Jubilee videos where it's like a person debating like 20 people of the opposite like ideology or whatever. So they'll have like a conservative versus liberals. They'll have a liberal versus conservative, progressive versus blah blah. Right. So they had Jordan Peterson versus all these like young liberals.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen it recently.
I've seen a number of those where they basically bring together a group of college age students who think they know more than they do, and they put them up against a Jordan Peterson or a Ben Shapiro, who are very good at being emotionless and to the point of the thing that they are arguing. So it's like it's designed, and it's always clickbait of Ben Shapiro destroys the left, or Jordan Peterson ends leftist ideology, some bullshit. When it's just
owns the libs.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. These aren't particularly branded as that, but these were first branded as one Christian versus however many atheists, and then they changed it to Jordan Peterson versus however many atheists. Once Jordan Peterson, he would not admit to being Christian, even though that's like apparently what he signed up to. The reason I bring this up is because he was being very evasive, and basically engaging in like different forms of sophistry, where if someone says, he's doing the philosophical, like, okay, you need to qualify every single fucking thing you say. If you ask me a question, you have to define every point. So it's like, oh, do you believe in God? What do you mean by believe? What do you mean by God? It depends. Doing that, so that ultimately he's going at it with this I say kid, but this young man. And finally, in his frustration, Jordan Peterson says, "You're really something." And then the kid goes, "Yeah, I may be something, but you're really nothing, because like you won't fucking stand on anything." And so Jordan Peterson's like, "I'm done with him." And so the guy gets up and just walks away. And that reminds me of this guy, fucking short story long, because this main character, the conformist, is nothing. He's willing to be everything, so he's therefore nothing. So the blank slate is like, it suits the character that he would be this impenetrable nothing, because that's like the best fucking defense mechanism. That's the mask that can be all masks. He's this chameleon who he'll shift, but not. He doesn't come off as this, and we'll get to the premise of the film after. But we're starting with the conclusion. He doesn't come off as this like master manipulator who's like a shapeshifter like that, like this trickster or something like that. He's not that kind of shapeshifter. He's a poser. So he'll, in high school, there were people who were die hard whatever the fuck they were into, and that's what they were into, and they're probably still into it now. And to a certain extent, we're all like that. There were those who like went through all these different phases because they were trying to figure out like, well, who am I? What do I like? There were the people that were just kind of like blah because they were like, well, I like everything, a little bit of everything, whatever. I like whatever's on the radio. And then there were people who just wanted to fucking supposedly like fit in, who would fucking wear the shirts, the band shirts or whatever it was. And they're the ones that you would get some guy being like, oh yeah, you like them? What's your favorite song? The gatekeepers would come out and fucking challenge them. And invariably that person would not know any of the songs. And then that person would be ridiculed for being a fucking poser because they basically were being posers. This guy is a poser. The problem is that it's when you're a high school kid wearing a fucking t-shirt, or a kid nowadays wearing a fucking Nirvana shirt, but you have no concept of like what any of that is because Kurt Cobain fucking died 31 years ago or whatever. And they're, huh? That's different from, well, I'm a poser, and so now I'm going to kill because the fascist government fucking says so, and I'm going to kill my old professor who was a political dissident. But then when the time comes, I'm not going to do it. Not because I relent, but just because I don't even have the convictions to be a fucking fascist piece of shit. I'm just posing as that because that's what it is. And had it not been that, had it been something else, I would have been that because I'm that person. I'm like a careerist, fill in the blank. So the premise is the whole film is a car ride to kill a dissident. And it's mixed with the series of flashbacks. That's the whole movie. And ultimately, Mussolini's, because it's fascist Italy. So obviously, I think most people who listen to our show are familiar with this, maybe not super details or whatever, but the point is that after World War One, fucking Germany, what became Germany, was on the side of fucking like the losers, and they were humiliated and had an economic crisis and the Great Depression and all that after the Roaring '20s, and fucking like a strongman leader comes to power named Hitler and fucking slowly takes centralizes power and becomes a fucking dictator, and we know what happened with that. In Italy, Treaty of Versailles, post World War One, fucking Italy basically thought that it wasn't in the situation of Germany, but thought that they were going to get more land and didn't get it, so they had this humiliation. So there was this callback to Roman Empire and what was great and what was before, and now we're not fucking great anymore, and we're humiliated in terms of like a victory that wasn't complete supposedly, and blah blah. So we have our strongman guy who's going to come in and have a definition of fascism, and swoop in and consolidate power, and now you get Mussolini. So by the early to mid 40s, Mussolini, by like 43, Mussolini fucking, well, 43 he dies, but his government collapses, So this guy, this central character, who is sent on this mission to kill a political dissident, it's years later, because the story takes place in the 30s. Fast forward to the fall of Mussolini's government. Now there are fucking partisan groups like marching through the streets. And this guy is now, he's a former fucking like war criminal, part of this fascist regime as an operative. He goes out there to meet his old friend, ends up running into a person who, I mean, I'm getting into the weeds of the details of the story, which are details of the story that they matter, but at the same time, what matters is like the revelation of who the character is more than like the details. The point is that he was sexually assaulted as a kid by this chauffeur, and so he sees that guy, and he's like, he's a fascist. He's a fascist. He's the one who killed the political dissident Guatri. He killed him. He's a fascist, assassin. Then he turns on his own friend, his blind fucking friend, calls him a fascist because the winds have shifted. And the person who sexually assaulted him runs off, but the reason he realizes it's him is because he's seeing this guy in this like back alley type of like seduction with this other dude. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense because I'm just throwing it all out there like real fast, but the point is, it's the end of the film. He sees this, he's turned on his old friend, and he's accused his abuser from years before, who he runs into, of being a fascist and a murderer. He accuses them both as these groups are marching through the streets. And he's left basically alone a few feet from this random guy who was in this kind of seduction with the abuser guy. And so that guy's on a bed, like some bed like in the street, like in the alley or whatever. And he's like naked. And he's like, he has like a gramophone or something that he's cranking. And so the main character sits on the steps. This is the last image of the film. He sits on the steps and he looks back at the camera, but is he looking at the audience who sees him as he truly is, which is that poser fucking fake bitch character? Or is he looking at, there's also a sense that he's looking at that guy, that naked guy. And there's a sense, because of the details of earlier in the film, there's a sense that he could be like this closeted homosexual, or which he has all this repression and guilt about, or it could be almost as if like, is he going to now engage sexually or somehow with this guy just because that's like somehow the newest thing to do? You get a sense of like, it's not a sense of infinite possibilities from the character. It's a sense of like infinite fucking adjustments based on what's going to benefit him in the moment. Not only like politically, he's a political opportunist, of course, and this film is about political opportunism, but it's like, what's expedient? What's the prevailing trend? So by the end of the film, it's you get I got a sense of like, I fucking hate this person. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, in order to function in society, we have to also be that person to a certain degree. And it's like, to what degree is it like, this is disgusting, or to what degree is this acceptable, like in your own life? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I was left with. it's like, do you laugh at your manager's jokes? Because fucking, I don't do that. But I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there are people who definitely do that.
Oh, yeah.
The technical term is a kiss ass, you know?
Yeah, I've used it many times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kiss ass, suck ass. Yeah.
Right. And it goes from the most mundane thing of like smiling at a person who you don't like because you don't want to own it. Not fucking admitting that you're pissed off about something. Keeping it in to, I was just doing my job. I know that, like, you're saying that all these people were murdered, but I mean, I didn't pull the trigger. I was just doing my job. I just did, all I did was I ordered the gas. I didn't know what they were going to use it for. What the fuck, you know?
Yeah. I was just doing my job. I was doing what I was told. We've heard that argument many times, and it's kind of, you know, the whole fucking. This is a very simple movie, and well, not a simple movie, but a simple story, and it's right there in the title, The Conformist, somebody who goes along to get along, to adapt to the situation at hand. And I think the only thing that I don't like about the movie, because I really love the story, I really love what is on the screen. I love that time, that period of mistrust and being unsure of what's around, the power of the fascist state in subjugating and controlling people. And I couldn't help but look at this Professor Quadri. And, you know, you realize I'm watching this movie for the first time, and I'm watching it, and I see he and his wife driving, and it's beautiful the way the fog is enveloping these trees, but not so much so that it doesn't obscure the trees, but there is sunlight that is creeping through the fog, and then you see these bodies, trench coats, hats, coming along to kill this man. And as I watched it, I instantly thought of Lorca. And I don't know enough, but the story that I always read was he was killed on a roadside.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. I don't know the
Did we talk about Lorca? Yeah, I guess we did. Yeah.
The site, it's the location is somewhere along some road.
Mm-hmm. But it was that same kind of situation where a popular and more humane writer grabbed by the state because he's viewed as a danger. His ideas are viewed as a danger. Now you take that with a professor who's teaching, who's educating, who is writing and publishing, and is a major threat to the state and the idea of controlling people. And you see how it plays out in this violent form. And I was just like, I was really blown away by that moment. And you see that moment of Clarici sitting in the car with Manganiello, his
the guy who plays Don Fanucci.
You saw that, really. You noticed that too. Hadn't seen him in anything else, but seen him this, and it was like kind of like, wow. and what is that? The wife who he has fallen in love with and has had somewhat of an affair with, she rushes to the car, sees him, and it occurs to her what is happening or his involvement with it. And the Fanucci character, I just love calling him Fanucci. He just gets out of the car and is like, cowards, homosexuals, and Jews, you know? No, I don't mind working in this shit, but if you're going to make me work with cowards, I lump them with Jews and what does he say? Jews, cowards, homosexuals, and Jews.
Yeah.
And
he says just kill them.
Yeah.
It's like, better yet, just be killed at birth.
It really encapsulates everything that is said in the state of mind of that time, but also in today's state.
Yeah, I'm like, in that time, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, you know, the grandeur that time. I don't think we've come very far. I keep thinking of Paul Mooney and Rip Van Nigger.
Yeah.
100 years later, nothing has changed. Not a fucking thing has changed. An exaggeration, but very much the truth in the political sense of the haves will always have, and the rest of us will continue to struggle to fight for whatever American dream we think still exists, and it just doesn't. What I love about this film is that it's Bertolucci tackling the history of Italy in that manner, and you know, doing so in a manner of saying, these are how organizations control, not in the bigger scheme of the administrative, but a guy who's given an assignment and says, yes, I will do this if it puts me further along to where I want to be in my life.
Of course.
Yeah. And the fact that he doesn't act on it at the end is not in any way a storyteller's way of absolving him of the crimes, or of saying he's coming to a realization that what he has done is wrong. No, he's just too chicken shit in the moment to do his own killing.
Yeah, and because he's not really, he's not about the fascist ideology. He's not a true believer. He's just playing that part.
Yeah.
And which is obviously is not to say that the true believers are better. So whatever that means.
It's just but at least, and this is not an endorsement, but at least they stand for something as horrible as it is. When you have these people that will waft with whatever, you are a fucking parasite. You are nothing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the people who are true believers are aligned with that ideology to such a degree that they will stake their life on it. They're committed to it. And at least you know where they stand.
Yeah.
So you can counter that. Whereas these conformists, well, what are they conforming to? Well, what do you know? It becomes
what do you got?
That version of the wild. Yeah, what do you got? It's like, well, it depends, you know. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that. If you look at the fucking characteristics of fascism, and there's a bunch of different ways of defining it. But they're typically like your bullet point characteristics, and if you go down that line, you will have people who are, yes, those rabid, like, firm believers that are like, yeah, like, kill them all, fucking, like, they're, and then there are those that will rationalize, and will say, well, as long as the force of the government or of this fascist regime is like pointed elsewhere, like, that's not me. Like, I'm one of the good ones, and so I'm okay. I'm not being deported because I'm a citizen. Um, I'm not being persecuted because I haven't done anything.
Well, it's also like a matter of recognizing, separating yourself from a certain degree of from a certain segment of humanity by saying, and I've heard people say, well, they're illegal. They don't have a right
Exactly.
to due process. And
Right.
you ask yourself,
Yeah,
well,
we
how the
talked
fuck
about
does
that
that
last
play
week.
into it? Yeah, well, it's
Right.
like, how do you justify breaking apart families, the psychological, physical, emotional damage that is going to be caused on people? I mean, what we're looking at right now, 4.5, 5 years ago, they were putting children in cages on the border of
Mm-hmm.
Mexico and Texas. We haven't heard shit about that since. But I guarantee you in 15 years, we're going to be dealing with the psychological damage, the violent tendencies of those young men and women who were beaten, molested, raped, tortured in those facilities, whether it be by the people that were watching over them or the people that they were incarcerated with. You're creating a whole new level of criminal from somebody who just was trying to live. And the fact
We're
that,
experiencing.
what was
Go
that?
ahead.
No,
The
what were you
fact that
saying?
no, the fact that no, no,
But
you
the
go ahead. The
fact, but
fact that what?
the fact that we ignore that, the fact that as a country we say, well, those aren't our people. It is not our responsibility. We do ourselves no great service. We do not advance the species because we don't advance the species out of pure greed and tribalism. And it's both frightening and saddening. I mean, I'm no, I've talked to you about this many times. Maybe I'm more of a bleeding heart than I want to admit. I don't like the stigma that it carries with it. But at the same time, I have to admit that there is a part of me that, cries for the underdog and says, we have to learn to come together as a species, not as just, not as Americans. This idea of America first, or even the Western Hemisphere first. We really need to consider humanity and what is best for us as a culture, as a human culture. And when I watch a film like this, what's brilliant about this film, and I was like you, um, I had to see it. The trial last week, recording our episode on the trial, showed me I need to make time to watch these films more than once, because the first viewing, it was a little bit difficult to follow the storyline, and admittedly, I was kind of tired. I was watching after work, but as I watched the film, number one, I was drawn in by Storaro's photography, the way he framed things, the beauty of this film. Because I'll say it right here, right now, this is one of the most beautiful films I've ever watched, and there are images in this film that will stick with me. Just shots that I'm overwhelmed by. Um, but the ideas behind it, I think, speak volumes about the the faults of who we are as a people. And regardless of, it's funny, you could watch this movie. This was a movie made in 1970 and released at that time. And it received rave reviews, and it did very well. But you could realistically look at it and say, in 1970, well, that was 38. That was the past. We can look at it in a sort of nostalgic sense of victory that we overcame that. But here I'm sitting in 2025 and people don't even recognize the fascist elements that are being spread and pushed and implemented in the United States of America, a place that once patted itself on the back as life, liberty, and the pursuit of freedom. And it's both sad and embarrassing to know that people are unwilling to look at the realities of the world that we live in. Yeah, Bertolucci and his screenwriters could shoot this movie in 1970 as a nostalgic and victorious look at what was overcome. But how can we watch this movie in 2025 and not recognize where we're going? This is a fucking textbook lesson. This is one of the things that I love about film, is that it means one thing. A film like this means something in the time in which it was made. 45 years later, it means something different. The question is, how bright are we to understand that? How consumed are we by our own sense of greatness to ignore the truth?
It's denial.
Yeah, it is denial. If I watch this film with a lot of people, anybody that listens to this episode and decides, well, maybe I should watch this film, and they don't see the Trump administration, they don't see the gradual dissolution of American ideals. American idealism that I'm not sure ever really existed.
Well, yeah,
but at least
there's that part.
There is that part. But at least they put up the front. You know what I mean? There was the idea. They tried to keep it within. There was a point where they tried to keep it within reason on how much the government could fuck the people.
Right now, there's this sense that if you throw out regardless, because then you get into that Jordan Peterson, like, well, okay, well, what's your particular definition of fascism? Because Umberto Eco has like his list, and there's different variations, right?
Yeah.
If you say that the current administration is fascistic, then people start, what they get into is like, well, I see elements of authoritarianism, but not fascism, or well, I would say more autocratic, or clearly they're not totalitarian because they don't have that much power in terms of every aspect of society, blah, 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 right? You start getting into that.
Yeah.
Then you get into, if you want to dismiss someone's argument, you say, oh, so now you're calling him Hitler, huh? Oh, as soon as you say Hitler, you've lost your argument. Piers Morgan is like a master at fucking doing that kind of stupid shit. He'll right away say, oh, you're calling him Hitler. That's so unreasonable. Obviously, that's blah, blah, blah. That's an insult against what happened. And they take it to that level. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be Hitler. If you look at some characteristics of fascism, let's do a laundry list. Authoritarian leader, that's the easy one. Cult of personality around the strongman leader. Ultranationalism, which is heartland, homeland, fatherland, motherland, however you want to describe it. Ultranationalism. Propaganda, slogans, the control of truth, the control of the narrative, right-wing media, because fascism is ultimately it's a right-wing ideology. The suppression of opposition of any kind, particularly with media or dissidents, etc. Traditionalism, nostalgia for a mythic past, make America great again. Scapegoating, which includes xenophobia and the narrative that the culture is under threat. Tell me if any of these are like, no, we're not having that. Tell me. Just interrupt me at any moment.
No,
I'm waiting.
I'm
waiting.
I'm with you on it.
Anti-communism and socialism, and we see that with the Marx, this whole cultural Marxist nonsense, and which really means Jews, and this whole woke thing. Militarism, machismo, anti-modernism, which currently we're seeing it through anti-experts, anti-science. We saw that really in COVID was like the beginnings of that, or like a real push towards that. Social hierarchy, state intervention in the economy, particularly with corporatism, which looked different in Italy because of the way that the corporatism was defined in terms of like guilds type of thing. But I mean, with our oligarchical fucking shit that's happening now, there's a version of that. Victimhood. Scholar Jason Stanley, he's one of the professors who was like, "Oh, I'm a professor of fascism. I'm leaving the country." It was I don't remember the other two. Two of them are, I think they're a couple, and I don't know if it's Jason Stanley and his wife, or I don't know if it's I can't think of the other guy's name right now. I can't think of it, but I don't know if that's his wife, and I don't remember her name at all. But I I only remember Jason Stanley, but there's three of them, and I don't know if they were from Yale or where they were from, but they're in fucking Toronto now. They're like, no, we're done. We know the signs and symptoms, so they're out. He describes a culture of victimhood in fascism, and that there's like this glory. On the one hand, there's a sense of we are all powerful, we are the top of the food chain, we're the top of the hierarchy, but at the same time, we are victims. But the thing is that we are victims of equality. So let's wrap our heads around that. That the idea that the dominant class, or this class that is now supposedly disaffected, that culturally is like dominant, that the fascist leader and the fascist apparatus is speaking to. They said we are the victims of equality, whether it's you could say it's the Jews, or it's the homosexual, or it's the immigrant, or it's the Muslim, or it's the black, or it's the this, or it's the gypsy, or it's the Marxists, the communists, whatever. Women, we are the victims of equality. That's a key component. An emphasis on law and order, or at least the law and order facade, law and order narrative. Anxiety around sexuality and the family. So our women and our children are under threat, and you need a strong man to protect them. Anti-unionism. So the worker shouldn't unionize. It's an anti-class struggle thing. If you're going to struggle, you need to struggle for the state. You need to struggle for the race, for your people. If you're going to work, you need to work for the race. You need to work for the people. You need to work for the Volk. All of those points, you can check them off. there are elements of certain degrees. There are elements of all of those points in everything that's happening now. The whole MAGA movement, and it doesn't have to be fascistic in the Mussolini mold, because fascism under Franco versus Mussolini versus Hitler, they all had different takes. Mussolini's take on racialism was not the Nazi take. You know what I mean? So it's and is Trump to a degree, is even Trump like is he a fascist ideologue? No. To a certain degree, he's also like the conformist, because it's all about whatever benefits him.
Yeah. What advances his financial standing, not his legacy, not his identity. You know, it's all about the money and the power to him.
Yeah, because it's much. It's that aspect of his narcissism is tied in with it. But there are true believers that are willing to prop him up as that figurehead. Steve Bannon said, he said Donald Trump is a moderate in the MAGA movement. Steve Bannon says that Donald Trump is a moderate in the MAGA movement.
They really need to get a leash on that dog.
He's also the one that when we did the Errol Morris documentary, he was like in front of a concentration camp talking about German engineering.
Yeah.
So it's here. It's here. So it's like, do this, say that, think this, believe that. Real men, blah, blah, blah. Real Americans, blah, blah, blah. Women should blah, blah, blah. People should blah, blah. This is how you should dress. This is how you should cut your hair. This is how you think of the conformity. I mean, I think the demographic of our audience is old enough because it's probably 40 somethings for the most part.
I would say
probably Gen Xers for the most part. I mean, there's a variation. But I mean, on average, I would go that far to say probably the majority are like Gen Xers or like elder millennials, where you can remember the idea of like the conformity of the 50s and early 60s. The Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best. The houses look the same. The fucking dinners look the same. Everyone has the same, the appliances that are coming out. They have the dog. They have the brother and the sister, the white picket fence, all these, the things that David Lynch likes to, like, fuck with.
Yeah.
All of that. That's the idea of Make America Great Again. That's one of those aspects. It's like, well, where there seems to be this sense of normalcy, where things have simple meanings. When if you're watching a Western film, well, the good guy wears a white hat and the black guy wears a black hat. And Muhammad Ali and the Nation of Islam at that time, they were all making comments about that. Is they're like, well, why is it that the fucking angel food cake is the white cake and the devil food cake is the black cake? I mean, it's simplistic, and the commentary is sharp based on that simplicity, but things were so-called, like, they were clearly defined. Like, this is what a man looks like, this is what a man does, this is how a man acts, this is how a man is. This is how a woman is. This is how she looks. This is how she should be. That's why, this whole this sense of like, oh my God, fucking these kids, this kid wants to fucking use this other fucking pronoun. Like, what the fuck? Like, our Western civilization is going to collapse because this kid thinks that their gender is on some kind of spectrum. That's fucking ridiculous. First it was the homosexuals. Then it was the women wanted to go leave the home. They wanted to enter the workplace. Now people want to use the same bathrooms. Remember when people had their own water fountains and things were very clear? Blacks in the back. Like, oh my God, what is going to become of our country? What is going to happen with the world? Western civilization is under threat. Because some kid with a fucking tongue piercing is coming up with these weird ideas about language. That's it gets that ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like, if you imagine yourself working at a retail store and you have or any kind of store where you have that and you have a name badge, whether a restaurant, whatever it is, but whatever kind of thing where you have a badge, like a name tag.
Yeah.
And imagine wearing your name badge upside down. Whether you do it on purpose or it's by accident because you just threw it on. You're going to encounter people on a day-to-day basis that are going to be like, your name tag is upside down, and it will bother them. Because some people are just more inclined towards, like, they're more orderly. They want things to be in line. They want things to be perfect. They want things to be, and there are more people that are just messy and just kind of like, whatever, like, who cares?
Sure.
I tend to be very orderly in terms of like my daily life, and for the most part, I like to be on time. I like to be early. I like to do this and that. But the conflict is like the stereotype of like creativity is like supposedly more open and open-ended, and like shit lands where let it land where the chips fall where they may type of shit. So there's that, but there are people that are like, no, this is how it's supposed to fucking be. The law is the law. It's not the spirit of the law. It's the fucking letter of the law. If the Bible says that the earth is fucking however many thousands of years to 5,000 years old, whatever, that's how much it is, and I don't give a fuck. Like, that's what it is. Because they're very literalist and they're very by the book. And those people make great middle managers in our society. And those people make great gatekeepers. And so if you're a conformist, then you have to try to get past these gatekeepers who are also conformists. It's like, how do you do it? Well, you have to mirror back their shit. Because the people who are authentic, those people, the nonconformists, they get picked on, they get attacked, they get fired, they get jailed, they get marginalized, they get exiled, they get killed. You don't last long. Go to prison and be be your own person. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
No, it's not like. So it's the struggle of the human being to, especially in modernity, when it's like, well, Terence McKenna used to always say, like, whether you believe it or not, his position was that culture is not your friend. Culture exists as an operating system that is passed from generation to generation, and it exists to serve itself only. And his shit was like, you have to basically wipe the operating system from your mind. And his thing was you have to use psychedelics to do it because that's the most powerful and the fastest. That's a side issue, but the point is that culture exists to serve the interests of culture. And so if we live in a tribal society, kind of our place in society is dictated by our culture. If you have like epilepsy or something like that, you're going to probably end up being chosen as your shamanic because there will be a place for you in that society. Some societies, if you are trans or something, or if you're a male but you're effeminate, they will say, well, you're of this third gender or whatever, however they have it. And it's like, we have this place for you. If you're this, you're a warrior. If you're that, you're this. Other societies, it's like, okay, well, your name is Smith because all your family are fucking metal workers and you're a fucking Smith. You know what I mean? Your name is Cooper because your family makes barrels. Your name is Baker because guess what you are, right? But in our society now, it's like, well, who the fuck are you? Because supposedly, like, we're free enough to not have that dictated to us. So it's like, also there's a crisis of identity. The conservatives, the Jordan Petersons, are like, well, yeah, but you need civilization to guide you, to show you who you are in this fucking like modern, postmodern, post-postmodern fucking society where all is lost, where there is no prevailing narrative. So what do you do? The question is like, who are you? Who to be? So I mean, like, we're all faced with the in the trial. It's like the question of like, what have I done? Like, did I do anything, or what? Like, what is my crime, or at least what's the accusation of like against me? And do I accept it? And do I accept that there is none? There is no clear accusation against me. For this, it's kind of like, well, not only do you just blindly follow, but like, imagine there is no fascist state in this film. Well, how does he know what to do? How does he know who to follow? If there's no if there's no leader. Obviously, it's like, well, no, you don't want there to be a fascist state. You don't want there to be a leader. You want to be able to just... But if there's no grounding in anything because the person is not exploring that, if they're just following, then that person is even more susceptible to whatever leader comes down the road. Because it's like, then you get into the Joe Rogan thing where it's like, well, I'm just going to, for the most part, I mean, obviously he's disagreed with people on his show, but I'm just going to fucking agree with whoever has the most interesting fucking argument and presentation and avatar. And like, this guy seems really smart. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Oh, this guy fucking sounds like that guy. And I'm platforming them because they're all fucking right-wingers. So, and the audience loves it and I'm making tons of money. So, hey, next thing you know, you're going down that pipeline. That's it. You go down the fucking pipeline of the manosphere, the fucking bros, the fucking crypto bros, the Gary Vaynerchuk fucking work your ass off and grind and get rich fucking shit, the trad wives, whatever it may be. A lot of those things end up like leading you to kill your professor. It's fucked up. If you're not grounded, you will get blown around. We're in a very dangerous place with kind of like online paths. And I'm not being an alarmist saying like, oh, things were better when, there was no pipeline with the fucking Encyclopedia Britannica. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like being that person. But you have to fucking like be careful, because it's easy to just conform. It's easy to be like, oh, echo chamber, I'm gonna just fucking repeat what I hear all the time because that's what I hear, and then the algorithm tells me, oh, this is what you like. I'm gonna give you more of what you like, and it's gonna be that much harder for you to dig yourself out of that fucking hole, because now you're just in that reality, whatever it is. At one time, this was like weeks ago, this is how crazy it is. My feed or whatever on Instagram, like the explore page, not like the one where you see all this different shit at the same time.
Yeah, I get
it
you.
completely wiped all of my preferences, and everything was like a generic like building and like different animals, and it was like ducklings and white buildings and fucking blue skies, and I was horrified. my knee-jerk reaction was like horror, because I was like, what the fuck? This is not my shit. This is not my shit. Like, literally. And then I was like, whoa, like why did I react that way?
Yeah.
Like, but I still proceeded to try to fucking get all that shit off that page, because I was like, I want to see images that I want to see. I want to, if I'm going to use this app, I want shit that I like, that I'm interested in, not some generic. It was almost like, it was very identity based, because it was like, this is not me, and I don't want generic shit like in front of me. Like, I hate this. It looked like some kind of weird catalog of like images from these generic ass calendars. And it was interesting, the reaction. But how would it have been had that thing changed and I would have just embraced it? And I would have just been like, fuck it, this is me now. There would have been some kind of sense. I mean, this is an exaggerated thing, but it's almost like a betrayal. Versus like, sometimes you go through your clothes and you're like, well, I don't wear this stuff anymore. Like, this represents me from that era, and so it's not me anymore. I'm gonna donate these clothes. I'm gonna do whatever, and I'm just gonna get rid of them. That's different, because that's you evolving, versus just accepting whatever is given to you. Because luckily, I guess, like, whatever I got was just the most generic, like, middle of the road bullshit, which I still found horrifying. But like, what if it had been fucking like Elon Musk and Donald Trump and all this other shit? Like, that would have been also horrifying. But I think more horrifying to me was the fact that it was so vanilla. At least I could laugh and be like, this is fucking nuts that IG is throwing me, Meta or whatever is throwing me fucking Elon Musk shit, and then you can at least laugh. But what I'm getting at is that, like, how we view ourselves is a very, like, slippery. The ground is sometimes not so stable.
Well, of course.
Sometimes it is, but obviously we exist in a context, you know what I mean? So it's like Rick on this show is not the same as Rick if you and I were talking off without recording.
No.
Everybody changes to a certain degree based on who we're around, etc.
Well,
Otherwise, we'd be fucking.
Yeah. But
it's
like
social cues.
We've talked about this in the past where it seems that anything outside of a person-to-person contact, one person to another person, is almost a performance. So a gathering of more than two people, it changes the dynamic. It changes the personality of an encounter, and you adapt to either what you imagine somebody expects or you adapt to what you think they want, which are not always the same thing. I remember being in college, which is that period of your life where you're so easily susceptible to ideas that are not necessarily well thought out. And there's a lot of protesting, there's a lot of marching, there's a lot of anger to be had at the status quo, or basically how things are being run. And I'm not sitting here telling you that there was not validity to the anger and the emotions fueling certain ideals or ideologies. But I think there is a factor of groupthink that plays into warping the idea of what you believe.
For sure.
So yeah, now you're marching, now you're chanting, now you're going along with what you think your tribe wants, which in some cases can become a betrayal of who you are. Right. What I find fascinating about this is it's the desire to either A, be accepted, or to be further your own professional and financial agenda. Mm-hmm. There's a moment in this film when the wife, who up until that point has been an incredibly I thought she did a good job with the part. Because she's so fucking annoying, but she's playing a young, very, I guess, girlish and naive young woman who's about to be married. But there's more there. The Julia character, who is marrying Clarici, it seems like she's got to be at least what? Would you say 10 or 15 years younger than him? Something around that? Yeah, maybe even worse, maybe even younger?
I don't know. Let's say 10.
Okay, so let's say 10. A considerable time. But by the end, as Mussolini is resigning, and she's commenting on these people, and she's kind of looking at her child who is wandering around happy and just being a child. And this is a dead, broken woman. And she lets in on something. She becomes a deeper character, not in a good way, but in a character arc way in which she starts talking about the woman that was killed, the professor's wife, had warned her about her husband, saying he was part of the secret police. And she said, if that's the case, then he's doing it for a purpose.
Yeah.
He's doing it to make our lives better. And he believes in something. And I found that very disturbing, where she's, number one, she's not as dumb as she has seemed. Although I think she was young and dumb, but I think marriage and motherhood and life has accelerated her maturity.
Mm-hmm.
And she has become one of those bourgeois women who, I will ignore all of this if it means that my comfort is maintained.
Of course.
And I think that's there's a lot going on in this film. I don't think this is as great a film as a lot of people have said. Like, it's one of the greatest films ever made. I think it's a damn good film.
Visually, it's probably has more impact than anything else.
Well, visually, yeah, and that's how I opened this conversation originally, where I kind of just fell in love with Storaro. I really want to go, as much as I love Apocalypse Now, and the way he shot that. This is on a whole other level of beauty. So much so that I will look through my collection and figure out what I own that he has lensed, because I want to watch more of what he shot. And it's not like I'm unfamiliar with him. I know the guy. I've heard him talk. I've read interviews with him. I've brought up YouTube videos with him. It's very interesting. He has a sensibility. And this is one of the great things about film, is that whether you're focused on, you and I have talked about composers, Philip Roth, John Williams, Bernard Herrmann. No, what was the guy that you like a lot?
Philip Glass.
Philip Glass. I'm sorry. Philip Glass, Bernard Herrmann, Ennio Morricone.
Mm-hmm. There
are people that grab a hold of you. It's the same way with screenwriters. William Goldman, Nicholas Pileggi to a certain degree with some of the stuff that he did with Scorsese, Jay Cox. But then Robert Towne, of course.
Mamet, yeah.
Yeah, Mamet, before Mamet lost his fucking mind. Or maybe I don't know. But you know,
it was revealed. Yeah.
Or revealed, yeah. But it's like, the point is, there are so many construction elements to a film. Screenwriting, music, editing, lensing, acting, that it's easy to get caught up in the actors and the director. But when you dig deeper, you start to find people that speak to you through the less obvious elements of a film. The Conformist is a film that I will watch again. I have a feeling that I'm going to watch this again before the end of this administration. And I think that the performance by Trintignant, Jean-Louis, I might start to appreciate it more, because the blank slate element will fit more. I can already see it fitting more in to the context of what we have created. The going along to get along, the bullshitting your way into the higher stratus of a movement or a government, or, bullshitting in order to be successful.
Yeah, poker face.
Yeah. To not stand for shit in order to move forward. I don't know if this film will ever be elevated to the level that it has been, that its reputation speaks of. But I have a feeling that I'm going to appreciate this movie more the next few times that I watch it. And I will be watching it again. Yeah,
definitely. And as a subject matter, I mean, like, you may not watch the film, but you'll watch it in life.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think this is one of those films that comments on the world that we're living in. What do they say? The past actions of the past are the greatest indicator of the future. Yeah. Something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that there's anything going on in this movie. Have they started killing writers and journalists by the roadside? Well, they're doing everything that they can to destroy their credibility. the fact that CBS 60 Minutes, one of the most respected news organizations in the history of television, is kowtowing and taking the knee to Donald Trump.
Well, they're trying to kill Big Bird. You know that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. NPR and PBS both standing up. How long will that last?
Yeah.
There's nothing in this film that isn't that doesn't foresee the world that we're living in right now. It's a frightening film. Yeah.
Going the way of Lorca, you know?
It's entirely possible.
Yeah. Yeah. it's the question that faces all of us, is like, not to conform or to not conform. It's like, to what degree?
It's a good point. Yeah.
You know? So you want to fit in, give us fucking money. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. That's buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. This one goes to Stephen Palmer, a member. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Do what you do. We'll do what we do. Be who you are. We'll be who we are.